The night hums with a hollow quiet, the kind that makes every sound feel intrusive. A security camera rotates slowly across a vast parking lot, its lens sweeping over lines of parked cars, each one reflecting the dim amber of flickering streetlights. The air feels heavy, thick with moisture and unease. The sound of wind passes through the lot like a whisper that doesn't want to be heard. Somewhere, a loose shopping cart rolls a few inches before bumping against a curb. The sound echoes louder than it should. The narrator's voice enters, low, steady, deliberate. Parking lots, empty spaces designed for transition, for moments between arrival and departure. But when the world sleeps, and these spaces fall silent, something strange happens. The boundaries between the ordinary and the other side begin to blur. The camera drifts through the lot, gliding past cars that seem almost human in posture. Hunched, waiting, their windows black like unblinking eyes. The silence deepens. The narrator continues, their tones soft yet heavy, each word echoing slightly, as if spoken into a vast, empty tunnel. Every night, people step into these places without thought. They park, they wait, they walk. But some of them never reach their destination. Some of them disappear into the shadows cast by those same fluorescent lights. The sound design tightens. Faint footsteps begin to echo somewhere far away, the rhythm uneven, almost hesitant. A car alarm chirps once and falls silent. Then, a single light in the far corner begins to flicker rhythmically. Once, twice, then steadies. For a moment, the viewer could swear a silhouette stands beneath it. The camera moves closer, and the narrator's voice lowers to a near whisper. These stories aren't about the haunted houses, or cursed woods, or ancient rituals. No, these are stories that happened in places you know, the spaces you cross every day without a second thought. But tonight, I want you to imagine something different. Imagine it's late. You're alone. The only sounds are your footsteps, your keys, and the distant hum of streetlights that never seem to shine quite bright enough. A gentle drone builds beneath the narration, slow and tense, a vibration that you don't notice at first until it starts to sink into your chest. A faint echo of breathing joins it, slow, almost synchronized with the listeners. The visuals now shift. We see parking lots in different states. Suburban shopping centers, underground garages, desolate rest stops on empty highways. Each shot lingers too long, just enough to make the silence feel alive. The narrator continues, for most of us, a parking lot is nothing more than a space to pass through. But for some, it became a final destination. The concrete beneath our tires hides more than oil stains. It hides the echoes of screams no one heard, of engines that never started again, of doors that slammed shut and never reopened. The atmosphere grows colder, visually and emotionally. The sound of a distant engine revving fades in and out, followed by the faintest hum of static. A discarded shoe lies beside a lamppost, half buried in dust. The camera pans across it slowly, revealing faint traces of something red near the curb. The viewer isn't given enough time to know what it is before the frame cuts to darkness. When the lights go out, these lots become something else. Endless fields of asphalt and shadow. Every dark corner a doorway. Every parked car a coffin waiting to be filled. And the silence is where they live. The ones who wait. The ones who watch. A beat of silence follows. Then, a single sound. The soft jingle of car keys. Someone breathing quietly, trying not to make noise. The faint squeak of shoes against the concrete. The sound grows louder, closer. The camera angle drops to the ground level. We see a pair of feet walking between rows of cars. The shadow of the figure stretches unnaturally long beneath the light. Another shadow moves slightly beside it, even though there's no one else there. The narrator's voice now slows, more deliberate, as if speaking from within that very lot. These stories are true. Accounts of people who found themselves face to face with something inhuman, or worse, something all too human. Stories of parking lots across the world, from the lonely rest stops of the American Midwest, to the underground garages beneath sleeping cities, to the desolate lots behind empty convenience stores at 2 a.m. The breathing sound stops. Silence. Then a sudden slam of a car door. The echo lingers unnaturally long. The screen flashes briefly, as if caught by a security camera. Static floods the image for a split second, and in that static a face appears, blurred, pale, gone in an instant. The narrator resumes, voice low and calm. If you're listening to this, make sure your car doors are locked. Look around once more before stepping out. Because the stories you're about to hear aren't from distant legends or forgotten myths. They happened in the light, just like this one. The faint sound of a heartbeat joins the soundscape, slow and steady. The camera pans upward, the lights of the parking lot fading into the night sky until only one remains, flickering weakly in the dark. The narrator delivers the closing line of the intro, a whisper that seems to come from behind the listener. Our first story begins in a small-town parking lot, where the darkness watched back. The heartbeat stops. The light flickers out completely. A moment of silence. Then, the low rumble of an approaching van engine fills the darkness, leading seamlessly into the first story. It was 10:57 p.m. when Maya stepped out of the campus building for the last time that night. The heavy glass door closed behind her with a low thud, sealing her in silence. The parking lot stretched out in front of her, rows of glistening asphalt under the flickering white glow of overhead lamps. The air was cold enough to turn her breath into mist, curling upward like smoke. Her footsteps echoed faintly against the stillness as she adjusted the strap of her backpack and started walking toward her car. She parked in the same row every night, row C, spot 14, second from the end, close to the fence. But tonight, a large white van sat in the space beside her car, spot 13. It hadn't been there earlier when she arrived for class. The van looked out of place. Older model, dented sides, one taillight cracked. Its back windows were painted over in black, the kind of shade that swallowed light completely. Maya slowed down without meaning to. Her instincts whispered a warning, the kind of quiet alarm that tightens in your stomach before your mind even understands why. She brushed it off at first, shaking her head. It was late, she was tired, and she'd watched one too many crime documentaries that week. She pulled her keys from her coat pocket and kept walking. Her shoes clicked against the pavement in perfect rhythm. Step, echo, breath. She tried not to look at the van, but her eyes kept drifting toward it. Every few steps, she felt that strange awareness that someone or something was watching. When she reached her car, she unlocked the door quickly and opened it just enough to slide in. But then she froze. A faint click came from the van beside her. Soft, metallic, deliberate. She turned her head slowly toward the sound. The van's sliding door, the one facing her, had shifted open just an inch. A sliver of darkness gaped between the metal frame and the body, as if someone was peeking out. Maya's pulse began to pound in her ears. She stared at the gap, waiting for movement. The fluorescent light above them flickered, plunging the scene into brief shadow before flashing back on. Her throat tightened. She took a deep breath, forcing a nervous laugh that sounded wrong even to her own ears. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe the van's old. Maybe the latch wasn't locked. She turned to get inside her car, but her hands were trembling so badly that she dropped her keys. The sound of metal hitting pavement felt deafening in the quiet. She crouched quickly, her heart hammering as she reached for them. The ground felt cold against her fingers. When she lifted her head slightly, she saw something, a shape, beneath the van's shadow just barely visible. A pair of worn boots. They weren't moving, they were just there. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She stood up slowly, backing toward her driver's side door. Her keys jingled softly, betraying her movement. Then, that same metallic click. The van door shifted again, opening another inch. This time, she saw a hand, pale, dirty, resting against the doorframe. That was enough. Panic overtook logic. She yanked open her car door, dove inside, and slammed it shut. Her shaking hands fumbled with the lock until she heard the reassuring clack of safety. The van door creaked. Maya jammed the key into the ignition. The car engine coughed once, twice, before finally roaring to life. Her headlights illuminated the van side, dull white metal reflecting back. She threw the car into reverse. For a heartbeat, the van door froze mid-open, as if whoever was inside hesitated. Then, suddenly, it burst open, slamming against the metal side with a loud bang. A figure stepped out. She didn't wait to see details. Only a glimpse of a dark silhouette, tall, moving fast. She floored the accelerator, tires screeching as she backed out of the spot. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. The van's headlights flicked on, blindingly bright in her rearview mirror. She sped down the narrow lot lanes, cutting corners, praying not to stall. The van followed, close, too close, its engine growling like an animal. The sound of its tires scraping against the asphalt filled the air, echoing through the empty campus. Maya's breath came in gasps as she tore through the exit, the speed bump nearly sending her airborne. The van stayed behind her, matching every turn. Her hands gripped the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She could barely think, only act. She spotted the glowing sign of a gas station ahead, a beacon of safety in the distance. She swerved into the lot, tires squealing. The van hesitated at the turn, its headlights pausing for a moment before dimming slightly. Maya pulled up beside the bright storefront, right under the security camera and floodlight, and just like that, the van stopped at the edge of the lot. For a second, she thought the driver might step out, that the nightmare wasn't over. But after a long, silent moment, the van turned off its headlights and slowly reversed out of sight, melting into the darkness beyond the road. Maya sat frozen in her seat, chest heaving, fingers still locked around the steering wheel. The hum of the gas station lights felt unnaturally loud. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat, a text from her roommate asking if she was home yet. She didn't answer. She couldn't. For a long time, she just sat there, staring at the empty road where the van had vanished. The world around her seemed so normal again. Cars driving past, someone pumping gas, the faint sound of a country song from a passing truck radio. But her mind replayed the scene over and over. That hand on the door, the boots beneath the van, the feeling that the darkness had waited for her specifically. Eventually, she forced herself to drive home. She checked her mirrors a dozen times, half expecting those same headlights to reappear behind her. But they never did. Later that week, she mentioned it to campus security. They said they'd checked the cameras, though they never told her what they found. Months passed, and she avoided that lot completely. She started parking near the library, under the floodlights, near the night patrol's path. But every now and then, when she'd walk to her car late after class, she'd catch herself glancing at the spaces beside her. Once, she thought she saw it again. A white van, parked 2 rows away, engine still warm. But when she blinked, it was gone. The narrator's voice returns, low and steady, cutting through the quiet. Maya never parked near that building again. She never found out who or what was inside that van. But in parking lots like these, under the hum of fluorescent lights and the cover of quiet, sometimes the darkness doesn't just watch, it waits. The soft hum of an idling engine fades in again, growing louder, pulling the listener forward as the narrator adds one final whisper. But others weren't so lucky. Leon had worked security at the downtown shopping mall for almost 8 years. He was 54, patient to a fault, and had learned to ignore the long, dragging hours between midnight and sunrise. His booth stood alone at the far corner of the parking lot. A small glass box filled with monitors, coffee cups, and the dull hum of fluorescent light. Most nights, nothing happened. He would sip lukewarm coffee, watch the empty screens, and listen to the wind rattle through the fences. But lately, something had changed. It began 2 weeks ago. At first, Leon thought it was a glitch on one of the security cameras, camera 9, facing the outer edge of the lot near the old exit gate. Around 3:14 a.m. Every night without fail a figure appeared. Not moving, not walking, just standing, between 2 parked cars. Always in the same spot. Leon leaned toward the monitor, squinting. The image was grainy, black and white. The figure looked tall, wearing what seemed like a long coat. No visible face, just a blur of darkness where the head should be. He switched to a different angle, but on camera 12, which should have captured the figure from behind, there was nothing. just the empty asphalt under the pale floodlights. That was the first night he felt it, that crawling unease in his gut, the sense that maybe the figure was aware of him watching. By the fifth night, he was sure it wasn't a glitch. The pattern was too precise. The timestamp on the screen always read 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 7 seconds. Like clockwork. Leon found himself counting down each shift, waiting for that minute. Some nights he told himself not to look. Just keep reading the paper, pretend it's nothing. But every time the hour approached, his hand would drift back to the keyboard, and his eyes would flicker toward camera 9. And there it would be, the same still silhouette. No movement, no sign of life, yet somehow watching. One particularly cold night, the heater in Leon's booth broke. He sat wrapped in his jacket, breath fogging the glass, the monitors casting pale light across his face. He tried to distract himself by writing his report, but when the clock hit 3:14, his pen slipped from his hand. He didn't even have to look. He felt it, that presence on the screen. He turned slowly toward the monitor. There it was again, in the exact same place. Only this time something was different. The figure's head, or what resembled one, was tilted upward, slightly toward the camera. Leon stared, his pulse quickening. His mind told him it was an illusion, a trick of the pixelation, but deep down he knew it wasn't. He switched to the backup feed, a second camera covering the same section from a different angle. Static flared across the screen for half a second before clearing. The figure was gone. Leon exhaled shakily, leaning back, a nervous laugh slipping out. He rubbed his eyes, muttering, "You're losing it, old man." Then a faint tap came from outside. He froze. His booth door was locked, the night air still as glass. Another tap, slow, deliberate, against the side window. Leon turned. Nothing there. The glass reflected his own face back at him, pale and tired. He forced himself to breathe. It's just wind, he thought. Just the cold contracting the frame. The radio on his desk crackled softly. A burst of static, followed by silence. Leon frowned and adjusted the dial, but no voice came through. He glanced back at the monitor. The figure had returned. Only now it was closer, no longer between the two cars, but halfway across the lane, standing directly beneath the streetlight. The light above it flickered violently, casting the figure in a stuttering rhythm of light and shadow. For a moment, the flicker caught its face, or where the face should have been, blank, featureless, pale as fog. Leon's breath hitched. He pushed away from the monitor, nearly knocking over his coffee cup. The bitter liquid spread across the table, dripping down onto his boots, but he barely noticed. The static from the radio grew louder. He reached for the flashlight by his chair. He wasn't sure why, maybe to prove something to himself that this was still the real world, still his job, still manageable. He opened the booth door, the cold air hitting him like a slap. The lot was silent except for the faint buzz of the failing light. His boots echoed with each step as he approached the lane. The sound felt too loud in the emptiness, like each step announced his intrusion into something sacred. He turned the beam of his flashlight toward where the figure had stood. Nothing. Just two empty spaces, asphalt slick with dew. Leon exhaled shakily, shoulders loosening. He let out a strained laugh. See? Nothing there. His breath fogged in the beam of light. He turned to walk back toward the booth. But as he passed the ticket machine, the beam caught something. A smear, black, wet, glistening faintly under the light. He stepped closer. The mark ran along the concrete in a perfect handprint. He jerked the flashlight upward, sweeping it across the lot. The light caught on the glass of his booth, and there, reflected in the window, just behind him, a dark figure stood at the far edge of the lot. Still, silent, watching. Leon didn't move. His breath trembled, forming tiny clouds in the cold air. Slowly he turned around. The space behind him was empty again, the reflection gone. By the time dawn arrived, Leon's replacement found his chair empty, his jacket still hanging by the door. The monitors were still on, every feed showing the same frozen image. Camera 9, timestamp 3 hours 14 minutes and 7 seconds, the figure standing beneath the flickering light, head tilted upward. The narrator's voice slips back in, calm and distant, almost mournful. Leon's booth was found unlocked. His flashlight lay on the pavement just outside the door. The security company reviewed the footage dozens of times, but what they saw didn't make sense. In every frame, the figure's head was turned toward the camera, even when the angle changed. Even when there was nowhere it could have stood. A long pause. A faint electric hum builds under the narration. Some believe it was a ghost. Others think Leon's mind finally cracked after too many lonely nights watching empty screens. But one thing's certain, that feed still loops every night, right around 3:14. And if you watch closely enough, you might see him standing there too, watching back. The screen flickers, static bleeding through. A faint outline of the figure appears one last time, closer than before the frame cuts to black. The narrator whispers, "Sometimes, the eyes we feel on us belong to something that doesn't blink." A low electronic hum lingers for a few seconds, then fades into silence. The hospital parking lot was nearly deserted by the time Claire ended her shift. The air was heavy with the smell of rain and disinfectant, a strange mix that seemed to cling to her scrubs. She stretched her sore shoulders, exhaustion pressing down like a weight, and pulled her coat tighter around her. The only light came from the tall sodium lamps overhead, each one casting a faint orange glow over the rows of empty vehicles. Her car sat near the far end, the same spot she parked every night. She fished her keys out of her pocket, stifling a yawn, when she heard it. A faint sound carried by the wind, soft, high-pitched, and rhythmic. Took her a second to recognize it. A baby crying. Claire stopped walking. Her eyes darted across the lot, searching for the source. The sound seemed to be coming from a few cars away, a small silver sedan parked crookedly under a broken lamp. She hesitated. The crying continued, quiet but persistent, cutting through the night. Her heart tugged immediately, instinct, she told herself. She had spent years comforting newborns in maternity, calming anxious mothers, saving infants in the ER. She couldn't just walk away. She stepped closer, cautiously, her shoes tapping softly against the wet pavement. The crying grew louder as she approached the sedan. Through the tinted glass, she could see a faint shape in the back seat, a baby carrier. The rhythmic wailing seemed to come from inside it. Claire bent slightly, pressing her hands to the cold glass. "Hello?" she called softly, her voice trembling a little. "Is anyone here?" No answer. Only the steady, pitiful sound of crying. Her breath fogged against the window. She tried to peer inside, but the condensation made everything blurry. She reached for the door handle, it was locked. She looked around the lot. Not a soul in sight, just the whisper of wind and the buzz of the overhead lights. Claire's nurse instincts fought with her growing unease. Something wasn't right. Who would leave a baby alone like this, in the dark, in the middle of the night? She pulled her phone from her pocket, ready to call security, but before she could dial, the crying stopped. Completely. The silence hit her harder than the sound ever did. Her pulse quickened. She leaned closer, trying to look again through the fogged glass. Inside, the baby seat sat empty. No movement, no shape, nothing. A chill rippled through her. She took a step back, her breath quickening. Maybe she'd misheard. Maybe it came from somewhere else, an apartment window, a recording from a phone. She started to turn back toward her car. That's when she heard it. Click. The unmistakable sound of a car door unlocking behind her. Claire froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward her own car, parked just 2 rows away. The driver's side door had moved, just slightly. Her keys hung from her hand, untouched. Her throat went dry. She scanned the lot again. Nothing but stillness and that low hum from the lamps above. The next sound was quieter, closer. The faint shuffle of a foot against the pavement, somewhere behind her. Her body stiffened. Every instinct screamed for her to move. She took a cautious step backward, her shoes slipping slightly on the wet ground. The sound came again, another step, heavier this time. Her breath caught as her eyes flicked toward the space between 2 nearby cars. A shadow shifted there, too large to be her own. Claire's heart thundered in her chest. She turned sharply and ran toward her car, fumbling to hit the unlock button. The soft beep echoed across the lot. She yanked open the door, threw herself inside, and slammed it shut. The moment she locked it, she saw movement in her side mirror. A dark figure stepping out from between the cars. He moved with a slow, deliberate gait, his face hidden under a hood. He walked past the silver sedan, the one with the baby seat, and stopped directly under the broken light. For a second, she thought he looked right at her. Her hands shook as she tried to start the engine. The first turn of the key sputtered, the second caught. The headlights flared to life, illuminating the man just as he turned his head away. His hood slipped back slightly, revealing pale skin, unblinking eyes that seemed to glint in the light before he stepped backward into the shadows, vanishing between the rows. Claire floored the accelerator, her tires screeching as she sped out of the lot. Her breath came in gasps, vision swimming with panic. Only when she reached the main road did she dare to look back. The parking lot behind her sat empty, silent and still, as though nothing had ever happened. She didn't sleep that night. The sound of that crying replayed in her head again and again. She kept convincing herself she'd imagined it. That exhaustion had twisted her senses. But deep down, she knew what she heard. The next morning, she mentioned it to a coworker over coffee. He froze mid-sip when she described the silver sedan. "You should check the news," he said quietly. "Something happened near the north lot a few nights ago." Later that day, she searched online. Her stomach dropped as she read the headline. Attempted abduction foiled. Local police warn of crying baby car trap scheme. Criminals had been using recordings of crying infants to lure women toward parked vehicles. Once the victim approached, another person would emerge from a nearby car to grab them. Authorities had found several vehicles fitted with hidden speakers and timed audio loops. Claire stared at her phone screen, numb. She remembered the moment the crying stopped, perfectly timed, perfectly silent, and that figure walking away beneath the broken light. She didn't tell anyone else what she saw. But from that night on, she never crossed a parking lot without her keys in her hand and her eyes scanning every shadow. The narrator's voice returns, calm but cold, weaving the story's final image together. Claire's compassion nearly cost her everything. But what makes this story truly haunting isn't just what she heard. It's how many others heard it too. Across different cities, in different parking lots, all ending the same way. A baby's cry, a locked car, a shadow waiting nearby. A faint echo of a baby crying fades in slow, distant, muffled, before being cut off by the harsh click of a car door lock. The sound reverberates in the silence. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper. That night, her mercy almost killed her. But in the next story, mercy came too late. The faint sound of rain begins again. Steady, cold, and unending, as the screen fades into darkness. It was a cold November evening when Tyler finished his shift at the local grocery store. The parking lot stretched out before him, dimly lit, dotted with old sedans and shopping carts left abandoned near the edges. His breath clouded in the air as he zipped up his jacket and pulled his hoodie over his head. The clock on his phone read 11:47 p.m. Only a few cars remained, belonging to the night staff and the cleaning crew inside. Tyler had worked here for almost 2 years, long enough to know that this lot had its fair share of stories. People getting mugged, cars broken into, even rumors about someone watching from the shadows near the dumpster area. But he'd never seen anything himself. He was just tired, ready to go home, and crash on his couch with a game controller in hand. As he made his way toward his car, parked near the farthest light post, a low hum reached his ears. He paused, glancing toward the back of the lot. A white van idled a few rows away, its headlights off, the engine running quietly. The windows were tinted black, making it impossible to see inside. Tyler frowned. He hadn't seen it earlier when he arrived for work. Maybe it belonged to the cleaning crew or one of the overnight stalkers. Still, something about the way it sat there, perfectly still except for the faint rumble of the motor, made him uneasy. He quickened his pace, his shoes crunching over scattered gravel. The wind had picked up, pushing shopping carts that clattered softly as they rolled against the curb. The sound echoed eerily through the empty lot. He reached his car, an old blue Civic, and unlocked it. Just as he opened the driver's side door, the van's engine revved slightly. Tyler froze, his heart giving a hard thump. He looked up. The van's headlights flickered on. For a moment he stood there, one hand on the door, the other gripping his keys so tight they dug into his palm. The van didn't move, but the timing felt deliberate. Too perfect, like whoever was inside wanted him to know they were watching. He got in quickly, shut the door, and started his engine. The Civic sputtered for a second before catching. He adjusted his rearview mirror. The van still sat there, facing him. Tyler took a slow breath, convincing himself it was nothing. Maybe he was just being paranoid after hearing all those stories. He shifted into reverse, pulled out of the space, and headed toward the exit. As he passed under the flickering streetlight, he glanced into his mirror again, and his stomach dropped. The van had pulled out too. At first, it kept a distance, rolling smoothly down the lane, its headlights steady. Tyler turned left toward the exit, trying to stay calm. When he looked again, the van turned left too. He reached the road and turned right, heading toward the main street that led to his apartment. The van followed. Now there was no denying it. The tension in his chest turned into full-blown fear. His hands gripped the wheel tighter, and he glanced at the clock. 11:52 p.m. The streets were nearly empty, only a few cars passing occasionally in the opposite lane. He took another right, then a quick left into a side street that led past the closed movie theater. When he checked his mirror, the van's headlights appeared again, closer now. Tyler's breath quickened. He pressed harder on the gas, trying to keep calm, but his mind raced. Should he call the police? Drive to the station? Or maybe head to a busy area? He pulled into a gas station up ahead, one of those 24-hour ones with bright white lights that made everything look harsh and unreal. He parked right by the front doors, where a tired-looking cashier stood behind the counter. The van rolled past slowly, not stopping, not even glancing his way. It continued down the road, disappearing into the darkness. Tyler let out a shaky laugh, half relief, half disbelief. Maybe it wasn't following him after all. Maybe it was just heading the same direction. He got out, still tense, and walked inside. The warmth hit him immediately, along with the smell of stale coffee. He bought a bottle of water, mostly to steady himself, and chatted briefly with the cashier to calm his nerves. After 10 minutes, he figured it was safe. He stepped back outside and froze. The van was parked across the street, engine running, headlights off again. Tyler's heart pounded so loud he could hear it in his ears. He turned quickly, walking back inside, pretending to have forgotten something. From the corner of his eye, he thought he saw movement in the van, a shadow shifting behind the windshield. He told the cashier quietly what was happening. The man's eyes widened, and without hesitation, he picked up the phone to call the cops. They waited together behind the counter, watching through the window as the van idled silently under the streetlight. 5 minutes passed, then 10. When the red and blue lights finally appeared down the road, the van suddenly drove off, speeding into the distance before the officers even arrived. The police took a statement, promising to check the cameras. Tyler stayed until they escorted him home. That night, he locked every window, double-checked every door, and barely slept. 2 days later, he got a call from one of the officers. They'd run the plates from the surveillance footage. The van was stolen. It had been linked to 2 attempted kidnappings in neighboring towns. In both cases, the victims had been alone, leaving work late at night. Tyler's stomach turned cold. He remembered the slow rev of the engine, the way the lights flicked on right as he reached his car, and the silent figure he thought he saw inside. He realized that if he hadn't pulled into the gas station, if he'd taken a quieter road home, he might have disappeared completely. The story fades out with the narrator's low, deliberate voice. Sometimes, evil doesn't hide in haunted places. It waits in plain sight, in the hum of an engine, in the glint of a headlight, in the quiet persistence of something that follows you home. The sound design builds tension. A soft hum of an idling engine grows louder, almost suffocating. then abruptly cuts out as if someone turned a key. The narrator's final line drops into silence. Next time you walk across an empty parking lot and hear a car start behind you, don't look back. The faint sound of a van door sliding open echoes once. Distant, cold, mechanical, before the screen fades to black. The rain had finally stopped when Jenna pulled into the multi-level parking garage downtown. It was almost midnight, and the city lights shimmered in the puddles outside, turning everything into a reflection of neon and fog. She'd been working late at the architecture firm again, and all she wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and sleep for 12 hours straight. The garage was nearly empty. Her heels clicked against the damp concrete as she descended from the elevator onto level 3. The air was thick with humidity, and the smell of oil and rust lingered around her. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, echoing like a slow heartbeat through the rows of parked cars. As Jenna walked toward her silver hatchback, she noticed something strange. A booth light flickered near the entrance, the small security post where the parking attendant usually sat. But the attendant wasn't there. Or at least, she couldn't see him from this distance. The booth light buzzed softly, a faint halo in the dim structure. Then she saw movement. Someone was sitting inside after all. An older man in a gray uniform, hunched slightly over the counter. His face was mostly hidden by the glass reflection. Jenna felt a small sense of comfort. The parking garage always creeped her out when it was empty, but knowing someone else was there made her shoulders relax a bit. She gave a small wave toward the booth as she passed by. The attendant didn't wave back. He didn't even look up. She reached her car and unlocked the door. The sound of the click echoed sharply in the silence. As she was about to get in, she heard it. The faint sound of a radio, old and crackly, coming from the booth. A man's voice mumbled something indistinct, followed by a soft burst of static. Then, a second later, another sound joined it. A metallic scrape, like metal dragging lightly against concrete, somewhere deeper in the garage. Jenna froze, her hand hovering above the door handle. She turned slowly, scanning the rows behind her. Nothing moved. Only the dim orange lights hummed above, one of them flickering off rhythm. She looked back toward the booth. The attendant was now standing. His back was turned, facing the open doorway of the booth, as if he was looking down the same dark aisle of cars that she was. For some reason, that unsettled her more than the noise itself. She couldn't see his face, just his stillness, the way his head tilted slightly, listening. "Sir?" she called out, her voice echoing softly. "Did you hear that?" The man didn't respond. He didn't even move. The scraping sound came again, louder this time, closer. It was coming from behind one of the pillars, maybe 10 meters away. Jenna's heartbeat quickened. She swallowed hard and slid into her car, locking the doors immediately. Her fingers trembled as she grabbed the key fob and started the engine. The dashboard lights glowed pale blue, casting just enough light for her to see her own reflection in the windshield. Pale, wide-eyed, terrified. For a moment, everything went still again. The scraping stopped. The flickering light near the booth steadied. The only sound was the rainwater dripping from the ceiling. Then she saw movement in her side mirror. Someone was crouched low near the back of her car. Her breath caught. She barely managed to choke out a whisper. "Oh my God!" Before she could process it, the figure darted across the row and disappeared behind another vehicle. Jenna's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles went white. She slammed the car into reverse and backed out fast, tires squealing against the wet pavement. The booth attendant was still standing by the doorway as she sped past. But now he was facing her. For just a split second, their eyes met. He looked pale, his expression blank and oddly distant, like someone lost in thought. She opened her mouth to call out, but as she passed the booth, she realized something that made her blood run cold. The inside of the booth was covered in dust. The floor was littered with cobwebs. The radio inside wasn't playing. It was broken, half melted from some electrical short. The glass on the counter was cracked and streaked with grime. Jenna slammed the gas pedal, flying out of the exit ramp and into the open night. Her heart pounded in her ears. She didn't stop until she reached the main street, pulling over under a streetlight, trying to catch her breath. After several deep breaths, she told herself it must have been her imagination. Maybe a homeless man had taken shelter in the booth. Maybe the radio wasn't broken. Maybe it just sounded off from the echo in the garage. But she couldn't shake the image of the man's face. The hollow eyes, the stiff movements. The next morning, she told her coworker about what she saw. He frowned. "That's weird," he said. "Didn't you hear? The old attendant who used to work there, he died in that booth 2 years ago. Heart attack during a night shift. They've been running the lot automated ever since." Jenna laughed nervously, shaking her head. "No way. I saw him. He was standing there." Her coworker's face stayed serious. "I'm not kidding. They found him leaning against the counter just like you described." The words hit her like a blow. She thought back to the way the man had stood motionless, staring down the empty aisle of cars, as if frozen in time. That evening, when she returned to the garage to confirm what she'd heard, the booth was dark, empty. The light that had flickered the night before was completely out. But on the counter inside, barely visible through the cracked glass, sat a single folded paper ticket, with her license plate number written on it in pen. The narrator's voice breaks the silence softly, deliberate and unnerving. "Some watchmen never abandon their post. Some jobs, even after death, don't let go so easily." The hum of fluorescent lights builds slowly, joined by the faint sound of a radio crackling. A man's faint, ghostly voice murmurs through the static. "Level 3. All clear." Then, silence. The narrator's voice drops to a whisper. "But the thing about ghosts is, they don't always guard you. Sometimes they guard what's still hunting nearby." A metallic scraping sound fades in one last time, dragging closer and closer, before it cuts out abruptly, leaving only the sound of dripping water as the scene fades to black. Marcus worked late shifts at a downtown restaurant, and by the time he clocked out, the world always felt half asleep. It was 2:13 a.m. when he finally stepped out into the cold. The parking lot behind the restaurant stretched into the quiet edge of the city. Cracked asphalt, flickering lights, and the faint buzz of neon signs from a closed gas station across the street. The night smelled of fried food and rain-soaked concrete. He slung his backpack over his shoulder and pulled his jacket tighter. It was a long walk to his car, parked near the far end beneath a single streetlight that glowed a weak yellow. The other bulbs in the row were dead, leaving the lot swallowed in patches of darkness. As Marcus started toward his car, he noticed movement, a figure standing near the streetlight. At first, he thought it was another employee leaving late, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there, perfectly still. He squinted, slowing his steps. It was a girl, young, maybe 17 or 18, wearing a thin white dress that looked completely out of place for the weather. Her hair hung long and dark, sticking to her shoulders as if it were damp. Marcus frowned. "Hey!" he called out softly, his voice echoing faintly. "You okay?" The girl didn't answer. She just stared down at the ground, her face hidden by the curtain of her hair. He took a few steps closer, feeling uneasy. "You lost or something?" Still no answer. Only the low hum of the streetlight above, flickering slightly as if it might go out any second. The closer Marcus got, the stranger it felt. The air around the light seemed colder, heavier. His breath came out in sharp clouds. The girl finally looked up. Her face was pale, almost gray in the harsh light. Her eyes dark, hollow, almost glassy, fixed directly on his. Marcus froze. Something primal in his gut screamed to stop moving. Her lips parted slightly, but the voice that came out wasn't right. Too slow, too deliberate, as if her mouth was remembering how to speak. "Can you help me?" The question should have sounded normal. Didn't. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, like they didn't belong in the world anymore. Marcus swallowed hard. Yeah, sure. Are you hurt?" She tilted her head slightly, her hair falling away from one side of her face. A long scratch ran down her cheek, thin, but deep, as if something had clawed her. "My car," she whispered. "It broke down. Over there." She pointed toward the farthest edge of the lot, where the darkness seemed to pool deepest. Marcus hesitated. He couldn't see any car over there. Just shadows and a low concrete wall. "I don't see anything," he said carefully. She didn't respond. Her arm stayed raised, finger still pointing. Something in the back of his mind clicked. The way she moved, the stillness of her shoulders, the unblinking stare. He stepped back slightly, his heart beginning to race. "Maybe I can call someone for you," he said quickly. "You got a phone?" The girl lowered her arm. Her lips curved, just barely. Not quite a smile, more like a twitch. Then she turned and began to walk toward the darkness, her bare feet making no sound on the wet pavement. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, torn between concern and instinct. Every rational thought told him to leave, but part of him couldn't just let someone wander off into the night like that. He took a few steps forward. "Hey, wait!" She didn't turn around. He followed, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the lot. The streetlight flickered again, casting long, jittering shadows across the cars. As he neared the edge, his stomach twisted. There was no sign of a car, no sound, no movement. Only the faint smell of something burnt, mixed with damp asphalt. And then, silence. She was gone. Marcus spun in place, scanning every direction. Nothing. His pulse pounded in his ears. He took a shaky step backward, bumping into the corner of a parked vehicle. Then, from directly behind him, a whisper brushed against his ear. Cold, fragile, unmistakably her voice. "Thank you." He turned so fast he nearly fell. But there was no one there. Only the soft hiss of the rain starting up again, droplets pattering against the metal roofs of the cars. Marcus bolted. He ran full speed to his car, fumbling the keys with shaking hands. When he finally got inside, he slammed the door, locked it, and started the engine. His breaths came fast, uneven. He pulled out of the lot, glancing once more toward the streetlight. The girl was standing there again. Same place, same stance. Only now, she was facing him, directly, perfectly still, her head tilted slightly as if watching him leave. Marcus didn't stop driving until he reached home. He didn't even remember the turns he took. His hands shook for nearly an hour afterward. The next morning, he couldn't shake it. He told a coworker what happened. The man went pale. "That same thing happened to one of the night cleaners last year," he said quietly. "He quit right after. Said he saw a girl by the streetlight, asking for help. But when he followed her, he found a burnt-out car near the wall. Wrecked, from an accident years ago. A girl died inside. They said she was wearing a white dress." Marcus didn't believe him at first. But that night, after closing, he saw the same light from the back window of the restaurant, flickering faintly in the distance. The narrator's voice enters again, calm but haunting. She wasn't lost. She wasn't asking for help. She was reliving the last thing she remembered, every night, under the same dying light. A faint sound of rain builds, joined by the crackle of electricity from a buzzing street lamp. The narrator lowers their tone, almost a whisper. "If you ever see someone standing alone in a parking lot, under a single flickering light, don't stop. Some people aren't waiting for rescue. They're waiting for company." The faint echo of footsteps fades, then the sound of a light shorting out, a sharp pop, followed by total silence, as the screen fades completely to black. The mall had long since closed when Olivia finally stepped out, her tote bag slung over her shoulder, exhaustion painted across her face. It was well past midnight. The cleaning crew had finished, the automatic lights had dimmed, and the massive parking lot stretched before her like a concrete wasteland. Her footsteps echoed faintly, the sound carried by the cool autumn wind. She exhaled, rubbing her temples. She had stayed too long, finishing an inventory report she didn't even care about. Now she was alone, surrounded by hundreds of empty cars under a thin wash of yellow light. Her car, a red compact, was parked in one of the farthest rows, close to the tree line where the shadows pooled thick and black. Normally, that would bother her. Tonight, she just wanted to get home. She clicked her key fob. A soft chirp sounded somewhere ahead, followed by the blink of her headlights. She started toward it and froze. There was another car parked directly beside hers. A black sedan. She didn't remember it being there when she arrived earlier. She was sure she had parked alone. She always did, to avoid door dings and tight spaces. Her pace slowed. The car was spotless. The windows tinted darker than any she'd ever seen. Her reflection warped faintly in the glossy paint as she approached. She tried to peer inside, but the glass only showed her own distorted face. "Okay," she muttered half to herself. "No big deal. Someone else just parked late." Still, something about it made her stomach tighten. The air felt heavier near it, as if the temperature had dropped a few degrees. She opened her door quickly and got in, locking it immediately. The interior light flicked off, plunging her into a dim gray-blue glow from the street lamp overhead. She put the key into the ignition, ready to start the engine. Then she noticed movement in her peripheral vision. The black sedan's interior light had flickered on. Just for a second. Her head turned automatically. The light had already gone out again. She stared, holding her breath. The car remained completely still. She waited, pulse quickening. Maybe it was her imagination. Maybe it was just a reflection from her own headlights earlier. But something deep inside whispered otherwise. She shifted her car into reverse and glanced at her side mirror. That's when she saw it. A shape, sitting in the driver's seat of the black sedan. Perfectly motionless. Her heart jumped. She couldn't make out details, just the outline of a head, shoulders, facing straight ahead. The longer she stared, the more she was certain it was watching her. Her trembling hand hovered over the gear shift. Every instinct screamed for her to leave, but she couldn't stop looking. The figure's head slowly turned. Just slightly, enough for her to know it wasn't a trick of the light. Olivia's breath hitched. She snapped her head forward, forcing her focus on the road ahead, and slammed her car into reverse. Her tires squealed as she backed out, eyes flicking between the mirrors. The black sedan didn't move. She shifted into drive, ready to bolt. But as her headlights swept across it, something made her blood run cold. The car was empty. No one in the driver's seat. No movement inside. Her body went rigid. She blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of what she'd just seen. She had seen someone, she was certain. She wasn't tired enough to hallucinate. Her shaking hand found her phone. She opened the camera app and pointed it toward the car through her window. The image flickered on screen, grainy in the dim light, and there, in the middle of the frame, was the silhouette of a person sitting inside. Her breath caught. She lowered her phone quickly, looked with her own eyes. Nothing there. Lifted it again, the figure reappeared, sitting completely still, staring straight ahead. That was all she needed. She floored the accelerator, her car jerking forward as she sped across the lot. Her pulse hammered against her ribs, each second stretching painfully long. As she reached the exit, she couldn't resist one last look in the rearview mirror. The black sedan sat perfectly still under the street lamp. The light flickered once, then went out, leaving the entire row in darkness. Olivia didn't stop until she reached the main road, her heart still racing. She drove for several minutes before she finally pulled into a well-lit gas station. She sat there for a long time, trying to calm down, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a trick of her headlights, maybe the reflection distorted, but the phone footage told another story. Her hands trembled as she opened her camera roll. The video was still there, only a few seconds long, but when she pressed play, the audio made her stomach twist. Beneath the hum of the engine, there was breathing. Slow, deep, rhythmic breathing. And it wasn't hers. Then, at the end of the clip, the figure in the sedan turned its head directly toward the camera. The footage ended abruptly, the screen cutting to static for a fraction of a second before going black. She deleted the video immediately. She didn't even know why. Some instinct told her not to keep it. That night, she double-locked every door and left the lights on while she tried to sleep. But her dreams were full of dark glass and faint reflections, distorted faces that weren't hers. The next morning, curiosity got the better of her. She searched online for the mall parking lot, scrolling through old articles. One headline stopped her cold. Unidentified body found in abandoned sedan. Mall lot remains under investigation. The date 3 weeks ago. Same make, same model, same color. The car had been impounded. Olivia's blood ran cold. She knew she'd seen it. She knew it had been parked right next to her. But how could that be if it was already gone? The narrator's voice slips back in, smooth and quiet, cutting through the tension. Some cars are never truly abandoned. Some engines keep running long after the driver's gone. Sometimes what you see in the seat beside you is the reflection of what's still trapped there. The faint sound of slow, labored breathing fades in again, layered beneath the hum of an idling car engine. Then one last sound. A soft click, like a door unlocking itself. Silence. It was a bitterly cold evening when Marcus pulled into the old multi-story parking structure downtown. He worked late nights as a delivery driver and had stopped for a quick break before heading home. The building was nearly empty, the concrete walls echoing every sound, every footstep, every heartbeat. He parked on the 3rd level, far from the entrance, where the shadows hung heavy between flickering fluorescent lights. The air smelled faintly of oil and rain. His car engine ticked softly as it cooled. He sat back, closed his eyes, and rubbed the bridge of his nose, exhausted. That's when he heard it. Faint, muffled sound like crying. Marcus opened his eyes slowly, listening. The sound seemed distant at first, maybe from the next level down. He turned off the radio completely. The crying came again. A soft, hollow sob that echoed through the structure. He frowned. It sounded like a child. He got out of his car, breath visible in the cold air, and listened again. The sound grew clearer now, the unmistakable sobbing of someone trapped or hurt. His chest tightened. "Hello?" he called, voice trembling slightly. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped instantly. The silence that followed was suffocating. The hum of the fluorescent lights above seemed deafening now. He took a few cautious steps forward, looking over the edge of the concrete barrier toward the lower level. There was no one. Then, just as he turned to go back to his car, the crying started again. Louder this time, directly beneath him. Marcus leaned over the railing, his heart pounding. "Hey, are you okay?" No answer, just sobbing, broken and uneven. He ran toward the ramp that led down, his footsteps echoing sharply off the walls. He reached the 2nd level, scanning the shadows, but the space was completely empty. Row after row of silent, abandoned cars. The sound had stopped again. He turned in a slow circle, anxiety tightening his chest. "Where are you?" he whispered. His voice trembled as he stepped toward the far corner, where a single light flickered. The sound returned, now faintly beneath his feet. He crouched down. The crying was coming from the concrete floor itself. He pressed his ear to the cold surface, breath catching in his throat. The sound was unmistakable now, a child's muffled sobs echoing faintly through the stone, like something buried alive beneath it. Marcus jumped back, shaking his head. "No, that's impossible." He stood, his pulse hammering in his ears. The air suddenly felt wrong, thicker, charged with something unseen. He backed away slowly toward his car, every step echoing too loudly. As he reached the ramp to go back up, he froze. Small wet footprints appeared on the floor ahead of him, one by one, as if something invisible was walking toward him. He stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet, eyes wide in disbelief. The prints glistened faintly under the weak fluorescent light, stopping just a few feet from him. Then the crying stopped again. Silence. Marcus turned and bolted for the stairs, his shoes slapping against the cold floor. The air grew colder with each step, his breath coming out in ragged clouds. He reached the next level and rushed toward his car, fumbling with his keys. He threw himself inside, slamming the door shut. His hands trembled as he tried to start the engine. Once, twice, it wouldn't turn over. The key stuck halfway. He hit the steering wheel in panic. "Come on! Come on!" Then, from the passenger seat, came a small, choked sob. Marcus froze. Slowly, he turned his head. The seat beside him was empty, but a small wet handprint was smeared on the window. His pulse surged. He grabbed his phone, the screen trembling in his grip as he turned on the flashlight. The beam flickered across the interior. Dashboard, mirror, back seat. Nothing. But the crying started again, directly behind him. He twisted in his seat, light shaking in his hand. The back seat was empty, but the air shimmered faintly, as if heat waves were distorting the space. And then, for a single horrifying second, the shape of a child's face appeared, pale, eyes hollow, mouth open in an endless sob. Marcus screamed and threw the door open, stumbling out of the car. The sound of crying filled the entire parking level now, echoing from every direction, from above, from below, from beneath the floor. He ran for the exit, his shoes splashing through small puddles that hadn't been there moments ago. The ground beneath him felt soft, wet, like the pavement itself was breathing. By the time he burst into the night air, gasping, the sound had stopped completely. The cold hit him hard. His body shook uncontrollably. He turned back toward the parking structure. Every light inside was now dark. The next morning, Marcus returned with 2 police officers. He didn't want to, but he couldn't sleep, couldn't shake what he'd heard. He led them to the exact spot. "Right here," he said, pointing at the floor where he'd first heard the sound. It was coming from right here. One officer knelt down, ran a gloved hand over the cracked concrete, and frowned. "You know," he said quietly, "they sealed off the lower levels of this garage years ago. Flooding issues. There's about 10 feet of water down there. Nobody goes in anymore." Marcus blinked. "Flooding?" "Yeah," the officer replied, standing. "Happened after a big storm in 2015. Whole basement level filled up. They found a car down there after the water drained a bit. A mother and her little boy. Couldn't get out before it rose." Marcus's throat went dry. His heart sank. The officer shrugged. "They closed it off ever since. Guess some sounds just stick around." Marcus never went back to that parking structure again. But sometimes, late at night, when he stops at empty lots between deliveries, he swears he still hears it. That faint, wet sobbing from somewhere below his tires. The narrator's voice returns, low and steady, cutting through the eerie quiet. Concrete remembers. Every crack, every echo, every scream it absorbs. It keeps. Some things don't fade with time. They just sink deeper. The rain fell hard against the windshield as Devon turned into the nearly deserted rest stop off the highway. It was almost 3 a.m. The kind of hour when even the world feels asleep. The downpour blurred the edges of the parking lot lights, creating halos that shimmered in the mist. His wipers moved rhythmically, but they couldn't keep up with the flood. He was halfway through a long overnight drive to visit his sister. The caffeine from his last gas station coffee had worn off, and his eyes burned with exhaustion. He just needed a quick break. Stretch his legs, grab a snack, maybe use the restroom, then he'd be on his way again. As he pulled into a parking spot near the old vending area, he noticed something strange. A lone attendant's booth stood at the far end of the lot. Small, boxy, with peeling paint and a flickering sign that read parking tickets. Inside, faint light glowed through fogged glass. Devon frowned. Weird. Didn't think these rest stops had attendants anymore. He shrugged, grabbed his wallet, and stepped out into the rain. The sound was overwhelming. A hiss of endless water against pavement, the occasional roll of thunder in the distance. He jogged toward the vending machines, soaked within seconds, but the rhythmic hum of the rain had a strangely hypnotic quality. When he reached the machines, he realized one of them was glowing faintly, a soft blue light pulsing behind the cracked glass. He pressed a button, and the machine whirred uncertainly before spitting out a bottle of water. He took it, turned to head back, and froze. The light in the attendant's booth was gone. He blinked through the rain. The booth had been glowing just seconds ago, hadn't it? He could still see the faint outline of the small desk, the chair, but no movement. Then, through the storm came the faintest sound. Tap, 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 like someone knocking on glass. Devon's stomach twisted. He turned slowly. The sound came again, this time from his right. The booth's window now had a shape behind it. A silhouette, standing motionless. He could make out the faint curve of a head, the suggestion of shoulders. The figure didn't move. Hey, Devon called, forcing a nervous laugh. Sorry, didn't mean to bother you. Just grabbing something from the machine. No response. He took a cautious step closer. The rain intensified, pounding the pavement like 1,000 small fists. The figure still didn't move, just stood there, facing him, head slightly tilted. Then the booth light flickered back on. The figure was gone. Devon froze in place, staring through the fogged glass. The interior was empty. Just a desk, a chair, a small fan still spinning lazily. He backed away slowly, his pulse thudding in his ears. He turned toward his car and nearly jumped out of his skin. Someone was standing beside it. Through the rain, he could just make out a person, tall, thin, wearing a reflective vest. The attendant. Hey, Devon called, relief and unease battling in his voice. Sorry, didn't mean to freak out. Wasn't sure if anyone was even working here. The figure didn't move. Devon started walking toward his car again, water sloshing around his shoes. You okay? He asked. Still no response. As he got closer, he realized something was wrong. The vest wasn't reflective, it was just damp fabric, clinging to the body beneath it. The man's face was pale, almost gray in the harsh light, and his eyes. They didn't look right. They were too dark, too deep. The attendant raised one trembling hand, slow, deliberate, and pointed toward the booth. Devon followed the gesture with his eyes, confused. The booth light flickered again, and now the glass was smeared. Not fogged, smeared from the inside, as if someone had pressed their hands against it in panic. When he turned back to the attendant, the man was gone. Devon's breath caught. He spun in every direction, heart hammering. No one. The rain fell heavier now, drowning every sound except the thunder in his chest. He bolted to his car, fumbling for his keys. As he yanked the door open and slid inside, he caught something in the rearview mirror. The booth door had opened. A figure stepped out. The same attendant. Devon hit the locks. His shaking fingers jammed the key into the ignition, the engine sputtering to life. The figure in the mirror started walking, slow, steady, toward his car. He floored the accelerator. The tires screeched on the slick pavement, spraying water behind him as he tore out of the lot. He didn't look back. Not once. For several miles, he couldn't stop shaking. The rain eased slightly, but his pulse refused to calm. Finally, he pulled over near a diner and sat there, trying to make sense of it. His phone had no signal. He took a few deep breaths, forcing himself to look in the mirror again. Nothing but his own reflection. After a few minutes, he dared to glance at the passenger seat, and froze. There, sitting neatly on the seat beside him, was a faded parking stub. The paper was soaked, edges torn. Across the top, barely legible, were the words, "Issued, 1998. Devon's throat went dry. He stared at it, heart pounding, until he noticed something else. The faint wet outline of a handprint on the dashboard, slowly fading away. Later, when he stopped at a different gas station, he told the clerk what happened. The old man behind the counter frowned, eyes narrowing. That rest stop? They shut that down years ago. Flooded the tunnels underneath after a sinkhole opened up. No one's worked there since. Devon's hands trembled. No, there was someone there. I saw him. The clerk shook his head slowly. You probably saw him. The old attendant. Used to stay overnight collecting tickets. Got trapped when the booth collapsed. Some folks say he still checks the lot for late-night visitors. Devon didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the pale man's dark eyes and that slow, deliberate gesture, pointing back toward the booth. The narrator's voice returns, calm but chilling. Some jobs never end. Some workers never clock out. And some parking lots will always have someone watching over them.